The internet, it has to be one of the biggest steps in technology. There is a huge amount of web applications that people use on a daily basis. Twitter, Google, YouTube, webmail, news, social networks. It seems to be endless. Unfortunately, with great power comes great responsibility. How many of you know how the internet works? How many of you know what SSL is? Also known as HTTPS. How many of you know how to tell if the SSL is safe to use? Did you know that SSL doesn't fully protect you? What can you do to protect yourself? Let's find out. First, we'll begin by explaining how the internet works in its most basic form. The internet is stateless. What does that mean? In order to keep costs down by not having to maintain direct connections to your computer, one of the standards of the internet was for it to be stateless. The internet, also known as the cloud, needed a way to allow servers to know who was making the request. Suppose you wanted to check your email. So you send your request to the server. But since the internet is stateless, it has no idea who you are. So it sends a response back to the user. To solve this problem, the internet chose to use cookies to keep track of their users. A cookie keeps track of things like, is the user logged in, where they are at in the application, and really any information that would help the server process your request. The cookie is passed back and forth between the user and the server until their session ends. This was a great solution, but the world is full of bad guys, and the internet is one of the easiest ways to steal someone's identity. If the bad guy stole your cookie, he could use it to make requests to the server, and the server will think it's you. That's when they developed SSL. SSL is an acronym for Secure Sockets Layer. It basically encrypts your cookies so that if the bad guy intercepts your requests, they would have no idea what information was contained in them. Let's talk about how SSL works, so that we'll know how to use them in the future. First, the user makes a request for a connection to a server that supports SSL. You can tell this by if the address begins with HTTPS. A list of all the types of encryption that your computer supports is included in this request. The user sends that request to the server and picks the best one that is supported by both parties. The server sends back the desired encryption method to the user. The server then sends a certificate to the users. This certificate contains 3 very important pieces of information: a server name, certificate authority, and the server's public encryption key. The server name allows you to know that it came from who you expected it to come from. The certificate authority tells you who to go to in order to find out if they are really who they say they are. The public encryption key, which we'll refer to as the public key, can be viewed as an unlocked lock without a key. They pass this information to you. After you determine that the SSL connection can be trusted, your computer will generate a random number that both parties can use to generate what's known as key material. We'll refer to this as the generated key. Your computer will encrypt the generated key with the public key provided to you by the server, otherwise known as the lock in our picture. Once our generated key is locked by the public key, it is sent off to the server. The server receives the information and opens the lock with what is called a private key. Now, the two parties can communicate securely. Sounds pretty secure, eh? It can be if used right. Let's talk about the different ways that the bad guys found to get around this security and what we can do to prevent it. Let's say that you decided that you wanted to make an electronic payment through your bank's secure online web application. You send your list to the bank But the bad guy, who is also on your network, intercepts your request, and he decides the best encryption that the two of you can support. He then sends the best supported encryption back to you. He then will send his certificate of authority, which will be unknown to your browser, which contains the public key along with the IP address of the sender. You receive it, but don't notice that the certificate authority is from an unknown source, the bad guy in this case. So, you generate the key, and you lock it with his public key, and send it off to the bad guy. Now, the bad guy can unlock the public key with his private key, and then the generated key between you and him will be exchanged back and forth. Now that the handshaking is done, the bad guy will turn around and go through the handshaking process with the bank. From there, the bad guy will pass the information back and forth between you and the bank till he gets what he wants. In this case, it would be your username and password. You should never use SSL on networks that are not trusted. When you connect to a network, such as Wi-Fi, the public library computers, or your own private internet connection, that network is only as trusted as all the people connected to it. There is software that allows people on the network to perform attacks like this. If you must access secure sites through a public network, be sure to have the latest browser. Most popular browsers provide support for determining if a certificate can be trusted. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.